Supreme Court battle. Senators hold an initial vote on Judge Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the nation's highest court. How Democrats are showing their displeasure. Sharing the stage. President Donald Trump and rival Joe Biden are set for their final face-to-face debate before the election. We have a preview. Deal with China. The Vatican makes an announcement regarding its agreement with Beijing over the appointment of bishops. And a special honor. We hear about the life of St. John Paul II on his feast day. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, October 22nd, 2020. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Judge Amy Coney Barrett is one step closer to her confirmation on the U.S. Supreme Court. Today, her nomination was approved in the Senate Judiciary Committee, even as Democrats boycotted the vote. A full vote in the Senate is set for Monday. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports. Eric?
Well, Tracy, it was just last night that Democratic members of the Judiciary Committee actually told the chairman that they would not participate in the vote, that they would boycott it. Now, the Republican chairman had some very harsh words for his Democratic colleagues, telling them that they will come to regret this decision to obstruct this nominee.
On the motion to report the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, the clerk will call the roll.
And the Republican-led Senate Judiciary Committee today recommended Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the full Senate. Every Republican supported the nomination, while every Democrat,
Mrs. Feinstein, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Coons,
boycotted the vote.
We're not going to allow them to take over the committee. They made a choice not to participate.
Chairman Lindsey Graham defended Judge Barrett against criticism that her personal beliefs will influence her rulings.
It's okay to be a complete person and be on the Supreme Court. It's okay to be pro-life. She embraces the pro-life cause in her personal life, but she understands that judging is not a cause, it is a process.
Outside the Senate, Democrats laid out their objections to the president's Supreme Court pick.
She is very much in line with her mentor, Justice Scalia. So many of the rights and protections that Ruth Bader Ginsburg spent her whole time on the Supreme Court fighting for are at risk.
But Republican Senator Josh Hawley said the American people want to see Judge Barrett confirmed, no matter what Democrats have said.
They called Judge Barrett too Catholic to be on the court, said she'd be a Catholic judge. They questioned the group she spoke to. None of that worked. This is the confirmation where the religious test finally failed that the Democrats have been pushing, and never again, I hope, will it ever be attempted to be used.
Bottom line, Democrats in the Senate have no way to stop this nomination process. They simply don't have the votes. Now, if she is confirmed on Monday, which likely she will be actually sworn in just almost immediately. And I tell you what, just a few days before the election. Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much, Eric. Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill tonight. U.S. intelligence officials report an attempt to disrupt the upcoming presidential election.
We have confirmed that some voter registration information has been obtained by Iran and separately by Russia. We will not tolerate foreign interference in our elections.
Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe says foreign groups are trying to confuse and intimidate U.S. voters. Iran reportedly posed as a far-right group to send emails warning, vote for Trump or else. FBI Director Christopher Wray says voters should remain confident in the political process. Well, tonight is the night, the second and final debate between President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. The two men are meeting face-to-face in Nashville, Tennessee, just 12 days out from the presidential election. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, tens of millions of voters will be watching tonight as President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden square off. This debate promises to be more muted than last time, at least for a few minutes. Pumping his fist in front of his supporters, President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump leave the White House headed for Tennessee. Just last night in North Carolina, the president's rally schedule continued full speed ahead.
If you want your children to grow up in a free nation where they can speak their minds and practice their religion and live by their values, then you must defeat Sleepy Joe Biden and the radical left.
But tonight, a much different venue. Both candidates socially distanced while squaring off on the issues.
Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just want to make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
Debate number one wasn't exactly civil. This time, a microphone cutoff rule will be imposed to reduce interruptions.
Well, I think the mute is very unfair.
How it works, each candidate's mic will go silent while the other delivers an opening 2-minute answer to each of the 6 debate topics, which are COVID-19, American families, race in America, climate change, national security, and leadership. But in the open discussion portion of the debate, no mute button. Ahead of the debate, former Vice President Joe Biden tweeted today, "I've spent my entire career fighting for the middle class and standing up to the abuse of power. Donald Trump has spent his entire career looking out for himself and abusing his power." USA! USA! Today in Michigan, Vice President Mike Pence brought this message to voters at a rally near Detroit.
And the right to live and work and worship according to the dictates of our faith lives loudly in the Constitution of the United States of America.
NBC's Kristen Welker will moderate tonight's debate. Now, President Trump tweeted earlier today he does not expect her to be fair to him. This is actually the third scheduled debate. The second one was canceled after President Trump decided he did not want to take part in a virtual debate. Tracy?
White House correspondent Owen Jensen reporting for us tonight. Thank you so much, Owen. And coming up later in the newscast, a closer look at initiatives on several statewide ballots with issues important to the faithful. The Vatican says its provisional agreement with China over the appointment of bishops will be extended for another 2 years. The accord originally was signed in 2018 and was set to expire today. In a statement, the Holy See press office says in part the deal, quote, has been positive thanks to good communication and cooperation between the parties on the matters agreed upon. Joining me now is Andrea Gagliarducci, Vatican analyst for EWTN News. Andrea, welcome back. So what more does the Vatican say about the agreement and why is it being renewed?
Well, the Vatican just issued a long article on L'Osservatore Romano, that is the Holy See official newspaper, in which they explained the reasons, the motives of this agreement. It's nothing new. I mean, it's something that Cardinal Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State, already said before, so that the agreement is for the Catholic Church, that is an agreement for the bishops. It's not a diplomatic agreement. It's not an agreement that is intended to go toward diplomatic ties, that they know that the agreement is not perfect, but on the other hand, they're pretty satisfied with the agreement, and this is one of the reasons why they wanted to renew it. I mean, it's just another 2 years ad experimentum, as an experiment, which means that the agreement has been renewed the way it was. There were no changes, and that's why we didn't have a longer statement and just an explicative article on L'Osservatore Romano. And we're going to see which are the effects, because so far it was just an experiment.
As you had mentioned, we know it's over the appointment of bishops, but can you walk us through the criteria of the agreement and if anything was modified?
Well, as you know, the agreement has been considered confidential, which means that we don't know the criteria, we don't know how the appointment of bishops develop in the talks between China and the Holy See, but we know something, and we can know something by what we can observe as an external point of view. We know that the Pope has the last word, but generally the Pope never says no to a bishop that is agreed with the Chinese government. We know that the Chinese government can give their opinion on the bishops, but we don't know how they can give an opinion. We know that there is a consultation platform that is based on bishops, priests, also lay people. Mostly these people are part of the Patriotic Association, that is the official bishops' conference in China, and that is linked to the government. So the criteria are kind of vague in this moment. So far, there have been 2 bishops that were appointed until these 2 years, during these 2 years, but the talks for the appointment of these 2 bishops started before the agreement. So we don't know if it's working.
Andrea, 2 questions here. Has there been any reaction from China? And also, opponents of the agreement cite China's human rights and religious freedom violations. Has the Vatican addressed these issues?
Well, according to the Vatican, to Cardinal Parolin words in many occasions, and also to other officials I talked to that are involved in negotiations, the Holy See always put on the table the issue of religious freedom. This does not mean that this issue will go into the agreement, because the agreement is mostly on the appointment of bishops, which means that, it's not about religious freedom. But it's obvious that the Holy See, when talking with China, addressed the issue. Then we don't know how China reacts. We know that China wants this agreement because they want to have diplomatic ties with the Holy See in order that the Holy See drops Taiwan. The Holy See is not intending to drop Taiwan, on the other hand. So for China, it's mostly a political thing. For the Holy See, it's mostly a pastoral thing with some rebound on religious freedom.
All right. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for your time today. We always appreciate it. Andrea Galeoducci, Vatican analyst for EWTN News.
Thank you.
Continuing questions and strong reactions today after comments reportedly made by Pope Francis regarding same-sex civil unions. The remarks, which reflected on pastoral care for those who identify as LGBT, came amid a portion of a new documentary. The film, entitled Francesco, chronicles the approach of Pope Francis to pressing social issues and to pastoral ministry. Joining me now by Skype is Alejandro Bermudez, Executive Director of EWTN's Catholic News Agency, Aussie Group. Alejandro, welcome back. Always good to see you. So the comments by Pope Francis immediately garnered reaction. How is this being received?
Well, it has been received depending on the group that you explore. As you can see, most of the secular press is celebrating. I was having an interview early today with a secular television in Latin America, and they were viewing this step as one step closer to the church changing its opinion about human sexuality and by accepting same-sex marriage, which is not what the Pope said. So you have that secular side. And then, on the other hand, have many Catholics, like the ones in Latin America, that believe that promoting civil unions is just a stepping stone, not an alternative to a same-sex marriage. And until yesterday, were basically united with their bishops fighting against the legalization of civil unions.
Well, Alejandro, as you know, when Pope Francis was Archbishop of Buenos Aires, he reportedly endorsed civil unions for same-sex couples as an alternative, that is, to same-sex marriage. That said, it really is quite another thing to do that as the Pope. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how his previous comments actually compare to what appears in this new film?
Yes, so it was never made public, neither Pope Francis, before this documentary that is the source of the controversy, nor as the Archbishop of Buenos Aires, he was never on record supporting civil unions. He was on record, nevertheless, opposing same-sex marriage. But after this debate and the controversy that started yesterday because of the 2-hour-long documentary, one of his close assistants, Archbishop Tucho Fernandez, has confirmed that back in the day when same-sex marriage was being debated in Argentina, he proposed to the Argentinian Bishop Conference that to offer civil unions as an alternative to same-sex marriage. But his position did not win within the Argentine Bishop Conference, and the Argentine Bishop Conference just presented a total opposition to any kind of legal recognition to same-sex couples. So now that he's a pope, obviously this has raised a tremendous question mark, because this is not a change of doctrine, but it's a change of prudential judgment and therefore strategy. So what is this going to mean for like the pro-family organizations in Africa or in Latin America that I have just mentioned? What is this going to mean for the Vatican role in international forums, where the Vatican until yesterday was opposing the legalization of same-sex unions, because, as I said, they have been proven historically to be a stepping stone to same-sex marriage.
Alejandro, we don't have a lot of time, but I do want to ask you this. Since what Pope Francis appears to have said in the documentary actually contradicts church teaching, do you think, in your opinion, that it requires clarification? And also, has the Vatican weighed in on this? Well, it absolutely requires clarification. Absolutely. As I said, it's not a change in doctrine, but I can tell you that my correspondence in Rome has been with every other journalist running around to get a Vatican official to say something, and it didn't happen. Didn't happen yesterday, didn't happen today. So yes, the Vatican needs to speak, because this is not a problem of the press informing about this. It's a problem of clarification that I hope comes. Well, Alejandro, thank you so much for your time. We always appreciate it. Alejandro Bermudez, Executive Director of EWTN's Catholic News Agency, Aussie Group. Thank you again for your insights. And you can read more about the Pope's comments and about the film at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Poland's Constitutional Court ruled today that a law allowing abortions for fetal abnormalities is not constitutional. The law was introduced in 1993, but the court declared it is not compatible with Poland's constitution. The ruling cannot be appealed. The Prime Minister of Iraq is thanking Britain for its support in fighting ISIS.
Iraq and Britain enjoy strong relations as friends, allies.
Mustafa al-Kadhimi was welcomed at number 10 Downing Street by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson today. His trip to London is part of a tour of European countries to shore up support for Iraq's fight against terrorism and the coronavirus pandemic. Coming up, a closer look at initiatives on ballots next month important to the faithful. Taking a look now at some of the issues voters across the country will be considering on their state ballots, from abortion to minimum wage and gambling. Some Catholic bishops are weighing in as the faithful prepare to go to the polls. Correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Tracy, let's start with Louisiana, where voters are considering Amendment number 1 to the state constitution. I'm told if it passes, it would ensure there is no expressed right to an abortion or taxpayer funding of abortion if Roe v. Wade is overturned.
We have worked tirelessly for decades to ensure that we have very pro-life laws.
Rob Tassman, Executive Director of the Louisiana Conference of Catholic Bishops, calls Amendment 1 a proactive and preventative measure to uphold the state's pro-life statutes.
So if you're a judge sitting in a court and Roe versus Wade is overturned, and then in addition, this amendment to the Constitution is passed, the only place that you would be able to look for precedent would be the statutes.
Meanwhile, in Florida, Amendment 2, which would increase minimum wage, has caught the attention of the state's Catholic bishops. They offer points for consideration in a statement writing, "Current state minimum wage is too low. Working poor struggle to survive," while adding, "There may be legitimate concerns that prompt both opposition and support to the amendment." Ingrid Delgado with the Florida Conference of Catholic Bishops tells me, though the bishops aren't taking a side on this amendment, they are asking Catholic voters to consider the issue.
So whether it's in this way or a different way, we really need to address just wages in the state of Florida.
And Tom Vinzer, the executive director of the Nebraska Catholic Conference, shares why the state's bishops have been vocal about opposing ballot initiatives that would expand gambling in the state.
We've concluded that this just does not serve the common good. It's not going to lift families up. In fact, it's going to drive them down. It's not going to help with crime. In fact, it's going to increase crime.
And in Montana, the state's Catholic bishops are opposing a ballot initiative that would legalize recreational marijuana use. The bishop said in a statement earlier this month that it can negatively impact the poor, the young, and those who struggle with either substance abuse or mental health challenges. Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. Correspondent Mark Irons reporting for us tonight. And tonight on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, a closer look at the alarming rate of coronavirus deaths among residents of nursing homes in New York State.
Clearly, there was a problem with the elderly from the very beginning. When we found out about COVID, it happened in the Northwest with the first case in a nursing home, or several cases in a nursing home when this first began. So we have to learn from the mistakes that were made. And certainly here in New York, the virus did spread like wildfire, and COVID positive patients should have never been put into nursing homes.
That was Janice Dean, senior meteorologist at Fox News. She lost both of her in-laws to COVID earlier this year while they were living in long-term care facilities in New York State. Janice Dean tells host Catherine Hadro why she blames Governor Andrew Cuomo for failing to protect a vulnerable population. That is tonight on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly at 10 p.m. Eastern. Up next, on the feast of St. John Paul II, we take a closer look at his life and legacy and examine how one city in his native Poland is honoring him. Today is the feast of St. John Paul II, and one city in his native Poland is celebrating in a big way. The city in the southeastern part of the country has unveiled a giant mural of St. John Paul II. The city's mayor put the video on social media. The banner is 30 feet wide and 100 feet high. It commemorates the 100th anniversary of St. John Paul II's birth and is on the side of an apartment building on a street bearing his name. Joining me now on Skype to help us reflect on the life and the legacy of Pope St. John Paul II is Father Paweł Rytel-Andrianek, Director of the Office for Foreign Communication of the Secretariat of the Polish Bishops' Conference. Father, welcome back. So good to see you again. As we honor Pope St. John Paul II today, what do you remember the most?
The most that I remember, they are when John Paul II met the people, they shouted, John Paul II, we love you, or Juan Pablo II, te quiere todo el mundo. And it means a lot. It shows how the people loved St. John Paul II. And the second thing is that exactly 42 years ago, on the 22nd of October, he said, don't be afraid, open the gates for Christ. So this is very, very touching. And the third thing is that it is not only the past. The most important thing is that it is now, because even now, even today, when we celebrate the Mass, today in the church, all over the world, we pray through his intercession. So we prayed through his intercession as a saint.
Well, St. John Paul II served as Pope from 1978 until 2005. What stands out in your mind about his time as pontiff and also the impact that he had on the church?
I mean, every pope has something special. And we can say like 3 times P. Pope John Paul II as a pilgrim, Pope Benedict as a professor, and Pope Francis as a pastor. And as a pilgrim, he changed the world. You know, he did more kilometers during his pontificate in these years that you mentioned, that all the popes together in the life of the Catholic Church. It shows that he was always with the people, and with his pilgrimages, he changed the world.
Well, we know his love for young people and dedication to fostering a culture of life was really such an important part of his papacy. Let's talk about the impact that has.
just to give you an example, he probably is a unique pope that was for 22 years a professor at the university, at the Catholic University of Lublin. Now this university has his name, John Paul II Catholic University of Lublin. And I would like to, and in order to go from Krakow to Lublin, you need like 6-7 hours. It shows how he loved students. And then what is important, today, this morning actually, rector of this university and rector of the university in Krakow of St. John Paul II, they signed an appeal in the presence of Cardinal Dziwisz, his former secretary, that the teaching of St. John Paul II might be even more present in the universities. So this is a very important thing because it shows that young people need this teaching and they ask for this teaching. Even when I see Twitter of the Catholic News Agency and other Twitters, when we see the picture of John Paul II, there are many likes, many retweets. It shows that still he inspires people. And then you mentioned, and you mentioned his legacy. You mentioned his legacy for life, and I would like to share with you something what happened today. The Constitutional Tribunal acknowledged that eugenic abortion is unconstitutional, according to the Polish Constitution, and it happened on the feast day of St. John Paul II. And the spokesman of the rights of children in Poland wrote on Twitter, I quote, "The decision of the Constitutional Tribunal declaring eugenic abortion inconsistent with the fundamental law is the victory of life over death. It is the restoration of equality of rights for every human being, including the unborn." And also thank the president of the Polish Bishops' Conference for this, rule now. So it is very important and very touching that such things happened in the feast day of St. John Paul II.
It really is incredible. And Father, we thank you so much for your time today and speaking with us. Father Paweł Rytel-Andrianek, Director of the Office for Foreign Communication of the Secretariat of the Polish Bishops' Conference. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.